You can decommission or destroy missile sites and underground bunkers and things of that kind. But if they're determined to continue attacks or to continue aggression against neutral ships, what can you do? I mean, do you go in and actually invade Yemen and strike at them, or what? It's hard to know.
Should we start with the Houthi airstrike that took place by UK and UK forces in Yemen? Several targets were struck with the aim to try and look at some of the underground infrastructure housing weapons used by Houthi rebels for attacks on ships in the Red Sea. And Rishi Sunak's insisted that Britain's not seeking a confrontation with those Houthi rebels. The Prime Minister telling MPs in the Commons today that he wouldn't hesitate to approve further action if attacks on commercial shipping in the Red Sea continued.
Mr. Speaker, I want to be very clear. We are not seeking a confrontation. We urge the Houthis and those who enable them to stop these illegal and unacceptable attacks. But if necessary, the United Kingdom will not hesitate to respond again in self-defence. We cannot stand by and allow these attacks to go unchallenged. Inaction is also a choice.
That was Rishi Sunak speaking a little bit earlier to the House. A Houthi army spokesperson has said the latest strikes against the rebel group will not go unanswered or unpunished, so we expect to see some retaliation from them. Michael Binyon, you're very experienced in this area. Is the UK big enough, important enough to be jumping into this with quite so much authority? We need the US in this, don't we? But that seems that Rishi Sunak's giving the optics of this being a UK fight.
Well, yes, it's good for morale at home to show that we're doing something about what is, frankly, just sort of piracy and brigandage and absolutely unacceptable. But no, the UK has a diminished navy. I mean, it's having great problems with recruitment. We have people on the ships that are in the Red Sea. I mean, enough, I hope. But I think the point is that the US, of course, is by far the most important player in this region. They're the ones that are actually making sure that the missiles, hit when they do hit. It's a pity that no other country has joined in. I mean, just for demonstrating solidarity. I mean, the French are there, the Italians, I think, are there. I mean, they could also have done something simply to show this is not an Anglo-US operation, which is being portrayed in the Arab world as the old enemies of the Arab world, Britain and America, are trying to hit at Arab territory, which is nonsense.
He has said that it was a joint operation as in so far as intelligence and surveillance support goes from Australia, Bahrain, Canada and the Netherlands. So he is sort of portraying some sort of joined up effort on this. But I wonder whether he's skirting around the issue of us having a very poorly recruited armed forces. Many of our ships are not going to be in use, potentially decommissioned, because we've not got the sailors to put in them. We've got some new frigates on the way, which sailors will be deployed to instead. But we've got, either not enough equipment or too much equipment and not enough people to put on it.
Well, exactly. I mean, there's been a real crisis over armed services recruitment, and particularly in the Navy. And as you say, they haven't got enough sailors for the new frigates, so they put two ships, sort of mothballed them to try to take sailors from one ship, put them on another. And I mean, the Royal Marines are really suffering. I think this is a very difficult situation. I mean, I think as far as the Red Sea is concerned, we have enough people on the ship at the moment to do the job that's needed. But we don't need to be stretched. We shouldn't be trying to deploy anywhere else at the moment. I think it's important that the message is sent from as many Western countries as possible. It would be nice if non-Western countries sent a message. I mean, China is really suffering from the Red Sea closure, but of course they're not going to do anything that would go down badly in the Arab world. They're happy for Britain and America to take a pop because they want to see the end of the Houthis as well.
Let's talk about what the US is saying. I was interested before the show, really, to sort of see what kind of senior officials or former senior officials within the United States make of what Rishi Sunak's had to say and what they think the UK's role is in all this. I spoke to Jim Townsend. He worked in the Pentagon as a senior official for many years. He's former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defence for European and NATO policy.
The US Navy is scrambling right now to try to come up with enough ships to handle a China contingency, as well as what's happening in the Red Sea, and also having ships go back to Europe. And now here we find ourselves scrambling to make up for some inaction and perhaps some bad decisions over the past number of years. And I think with the UK, it's something similar, and the other allies too. And now we're finding that we're having to scramble. And frankly, this reminds me so much of your history, and ours too, in the United States. But I think famously Winston Churchill making the case in 1938 that the UK had to rearm to face a rising Germany, and laying out how unready British forces are to do this.
That was Jim Townsend speaking to me a little bit earlier. So it's not just a UK issue. I think we can be certain of that. And, you know, several other Western countries have also suffered from depleting numbers of armed forces personnel and depleting stock as well. Samantha, questions are being asked today about Rishi Sunak's long-term strategy. He said that we will retaliate if we need to. We cannot stand by and allow these attacks to go unchallenged. But questions are being asked of him, and were asked of him in the House, about where this goes from here. Are we hearing enough about that?
I mean, you're completely right. The questions are being raised about the long-term plan that Rishi Sunak and the Conservative government have. And when it comes to sustaining these attacks, as was rightly said, we are suffering from a depleted military. We're lower recruitment numbers year on year, and a seeming the optics, I mean, as was mentioned with your previous interviewee, is that the British military is not the staunch force on the global stage that he once was. So for Rishi Sunak, I mean, there have been talks about raising defense spending, about how they could essentially redivert money into defense and into perhaps rebuilding it in the Churchillian spirit. But overall, the optics very much from the Arab world and from the global stage is that although Australia, Canada, other global forces are behind the UK and the US in the sentiment of what we're trying to achieve against the Houthis, they are decidedly inactive in their actual ability or their willingness to send their navies or their ships out to assist. I mean, it was said by Rishi Sunak that since the last round of action against the Houthis, the last round of strikes, there had been 12 illegal attacks against shipping containers and other vessels traveling along that route. And so it seems as though this isn't a problem that's going away, and the UK currently, as it stands, does not have the military presence to be able to sustain the level of action that we need, especially when larger players such as the US and China and the Arab world in general are reticent to get involved at the scale that we need.
Michael, is Rishi Sunak's long-term strategy in the Red Sea clear, and does it need to be?
Well, it's not clear at all. I mean, you can decommission or destroy missile sites and underground bunkers and things of that kind. But if they're determined to continue attacks or to continue aggression against neutral ships, what can you do? I mean, do you go in and actually invade Yemen and strike at them, or what? It's hard to know.